for these. I didn't know you was going to stay there, Brother Ben, or I would
No, we're good. I'm moving back. We're good.
Oh, okay. Still looking at the Theophanies. We've got, I don't know if we'll get all three of these. But we'll get looking at Joshua right now. As we know, Joshua was the one that took over after Moses died. He prepared Israel for crossing over into the promised land. He fulfilled God's commandments. They crossed Jordan. They made it there to Jericho. And they're preparing to go to battle with Jericho. Joshua is out taking in the city, trying to devise a plan to take the city. And of course, Israel has nothing that they need to conquer the walled city. They have no siege engines. They have no catapults. They have no way to get over the walls. So Joshua's trying to devise a plan, searching the ground over, looking things over. Him being the leader, he's got to come up with a plan to take Jericho. So while he's out there looking around Jericho, a man appears to him. And the man has a sword, and he's got it drawn. Verse 13 of chapter 5 of Joshua says, "It came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went unto him and said unto him, Art thou for us or for our adversary? And he said, Nay, but as captain of the host of the Lord am I now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and did worship, and said unto him, What saith my Lord unto his servant? And the captain of the Lord's host said unto Joshua, Loose thy shoes from off thy foot, for the place whereupon thou standest is holy. And Joshua did so." So Joshua, as I said, he runs into this man, meets this man, asks him, whose side you on? You're on ours or you're on Jericho's? And the man, which is Jesus, says he's the captain of the host of the Lord's army, and we know Jesus is the captain of the host of the Lord's army. When he comes back to earth, he's going to be the leader of his army. He's leading his army to earth. Well, here he's leading Israel. As you know, we looked at Moses there at the I forget what chapter it was. God told him that Jesus, the angel of the Lord, was going to go before him. Was going to help them cross the wilderness, through their wilderness journey, and would also help them in conquering the promised land. And now we see Jesus here helping conquer the promised land. He's telling Joshua what to do. When Jesus tells him that he's the captain of the host of the Lord's army, of course Joshua falls down to worship him. And again, you see he doesn't stop him. So he is God. Only God is to be worshipped, not angels. And he also tells him the same thing that he told Moses. Joshua, take your shoes off, you're standing on holy ground. Again, it wasn't the ground that was holy, it was Jesus being there that made the ground holy. That was the only reason that it was holy, was because of Jesus being there. You go into chapter 6, 1 through 5, and Jesus gives Joshua the plan to take Jericho. It says, "Now Jericho was straitly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out, and none came in. And the Lord had said unto Joshua, See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor. And you shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horn. And the 7th day you shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat. And the people shall ascend up, every man straight before him. Here Jesus gives Joshua the plan to take the city. He tells him to gather up the men of war. The Bible doesn't tell it here, but he does tell them to divide them up. You put the Ark of the Covenant, you put 7 priests with 7 trumpets in between. They're in the middle of it. You march around the city one time for 6 days. And this is what they do. He also tells them on the 7th day, you march around the city 7 times. And after you finish that 7th go around, you blow your trumpet, the people shout, and the wall's going to fall flat. And you go straight in. And we know this is what they do. Now, I've read several different ways the way that the walls came down. Now, if the walls fell over, how much does that help? You still got to climb over the wall if it just fell over. I've also read where they said it just crumbled down. Well, what good does that have if it just crumbles down? You still got to climb over the wall. This time it's going to make it harder because it's going to slip and slide as you try to cross over the rocks or whatever they built it out of anyway. And by the way it reads, and I have read others, I've read where archaeologists have dug around there at Jericho. When it says the walls fell flat down, they fell flat down. Earth opened up, level with the ground. And you know what it says there? It says they walked straight in. Didn't say they had to climb over. Didn't say they had to go around anything. It said they walked straight in the city. Verse 20 says, so the people shouted when the priest blew with the trumpets, and it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat. Didn't fall over. Didn't crumble. So that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. So you believe what you're going to believe. But I believe the earth opened up, the walls fell down, level with the ground. They just walked right on in. They didn't have to go around nothing, didn't have to crawl over nothing. The walls were completely out of the way. And that would have put Rahab's house right there even with the ground, because her house was built on top of the wall. Wouldn't have been hard to see her house, because it's going to be the only one standing there where the wall was, because her house was on the ground. And you can see the little red string, rope, whatever it was that she had around the window. It wasn't up yonder somewhere. So that's what I believe happened to the wall. Now, you believe, like I said, you can take it any way you want. But God done a miraculous thing there in allowing them to go into the city. By them not having to try to get over the wall or do something with the wall. God told Joshua what to do. Joshua did it. The only problem is they didn't seek God's counsel when they went to Ai. Ai was just a little bitty old small city. And what did they do? They got whooped because they didn't go to Jesus. If they would have sought Jesus' comments, they probably wouldn't have lost in Ai. Then you have Gideon. Y'all got any comments on Joshua? Judges 6. Through 35. This is the call of Gideon. Gideon was the son of Joash. We know what happened during the time of the judges. Israel would worship God for a while, and then they would forsake Him, worship idols. God would send Canaanites, Midianites, Amorites, all these ites He would send against them to conquer them. Then they would turn back to God, and God would free them. And this is what has happened here with Gideon. Gideon apparently, or him and his family, they worshiped idols, and I don't know if they worshiped God also. I don't know. I wasn't living then, so I don't know. I know they worshiped idols because his father he's built one for himself, and it's Baal and Ashtoreth. But God also went to Abraham, and Abraham's family done the same thing. They worshiped idols also, and He called Abraham out. Here He calls Gideon out from an idolatrous family. And there came an angel of the Lord and said, under an oak which was in Ophrah, that pertained unto Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon thrashed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites, because the Midianites were plaguing Israel at this time. Apparently they would wait till harvest time, and then they would come in with their army and steal harvest. Here Gideon is hiding. When you thrashed wheat, you done it up on a hill because you threw the stuff up in the air and the wind blew the chaff away. And here he's hiding behind a wine press. So he doesn't have a real big crop, and he's hiding. Doing it because he doesn't want the Midianites to see it and then come in and steal their wheat from them. And the angel of the Lord is sitting under an oak tree watching him. It says, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, the Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. And Gideon at this time was not a mighty man of valor. And Gideon said unto him, O my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? And where be all his miracles which our fathers told us of, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord hath forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. Gideon doesn't know. Where have you been, Gideon? You worshiping idols. Your father's got a big altar out there. He's got a grove out there. Him and the whole city is worshiping idols. And you want to know why God's not prospering you? Gideon, it ain't that hard to figure out. But he's asking Jesus here, what's going on? He should know. Then the Lord looked upon him and said, go in this thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent thee? And now he gives Gideon his marching orders, what he wants him to do. Gideon, I want you to lead Israel. Lead them against the Midianites, and I'm going to give them to you. You're going to defeat them. And then, of course, Gideon's like all the rest of us. Wait a minute, Lord. I ain't mad enough for this. So he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least of my father's house. Lord, I'm the smallest, the youngest, the weakest in my father's house. My father's house is poor. We ain't nobodies. How am I going to lead the people of Israel? He done told you, I'm going with you. That's what Jesus said. And the Lord said unto him, surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. He said, Gideon, I'm going to be with you, and it's going to be like you're fighting one man. It ain't going to be no great big deal. It's going to be easy because I'm with you. You're not going to do it on your own. And he said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, then show me a sign that thou talkest with me. Like everybody else, we want a sign. You ain't ever asked God for a sign? I have. Several times. Lord, I need something to know that I'm supposed to do this or I'm supposed to do that. Lord, I need something, to show me that I don't need to do this, don't need to do that. We're always asking for signs. And of course, Gideon does the same thing. Lord, I need a sign. And he does give him a sign. We see Gideon here as he talks to the Lord, says, Depart not hence, I pray thee, until I come unto thee, and bring forth a present or an offering, is what it means there, and set it before thee. And he said, I will tarry until thou come again. He says, Lord, stay here, let me offer an offering to you. Then Gideon went in and made ready a kid, unleavened cakes of an ephah of flour, and flesh he put in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot, and brought it out unto them unto the oak, and presented it to him. Then the angel of the Lord said unto him, Take the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and lay them upon this rock, and pour out the broth, and he did so. So he brought all this out to Jesus. Jesus tells him, Place it on this rock, and you pour the broth over it. Kind of like Elijah. Soak it down. He uses this broth to soak the meat and the cakes down. It says, Then the angel of the Lord put forth the end of his staff that was in his hand, and touched the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and there rose up fire out of the rock, and consumed the flesh and the unleavened cake. Then the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. He wanted a sign, he got it. Jesus touched this stuff with his staff, and it automatically burst into fire. Consumed it. So he has a sign now. That gives 3 or 4 more times he wants signs before he actually goes to battle. It has to do with the dew and the fleece, but we won't get into that. It says that Gideon perceived that he was an angel of the Lord. Gideon said, Alas, O Lord God, for because I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face. And the Lord said unto him, Peace be unto thee, fear not, thou shalt not die. Then Gideon built an altar there unto the Lord, and called it Jehovah Shalom. Unto this day it is yet an orphan of the Abiezrites. So after the Lord departs, Gideon realizes that he's not going to die because he's seen Jesus. And he builds an altar there to the Lord. And after he builds this altar, whether he sacrifices it on it there or not, it doesn't say. But it goes on that night, Jesus comes back to him. It says, It came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, Take thy father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that thy father hath, and cut down the grove that is by it. So you see, his family was worshiping idols. The city there also was worshiping idols. Baal and, what was her name? Asherah, a goddess. And that's what they were worshiping. And like I said, if they still offered sacrifices to God, it doesn't say. It only talks about this one altar, and that being the Baal. So apparently they weren't worshiping God at all. And after he tells him, You tear all this down, he says, And build an altar unto the Lord thy God upon the top of this rock in the ordered place, and take the second bullock, and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood of the grove which thou shalt cut down. So he tells him what to do. You go destroy this idol. You cut down the grove that represents Asherah. You build me an altar there. You take the wood from the grove, and you offer sacrifice. And you use the wood from the grove to burn this sacrifice. 27 says, Gideon took 10 men of his servants, and did as the Lord had said unto him. And so it was, because he feared his father's household and the men of the city, that he could not do it by day, that he did it by night. So he goes and does this probably the same night, he gathers up 10 men and they go do this. When everybody wakes up the next morning, they see the altar of Baal is broke down, the grove is cut down, and there's a different altar up there. And a sacrifice has been done upon this altar. Apparently they realized Gideon did this for the Lord. They figure out it is Gideon who does it. They go to Joash, Gideon's father, said, we want Gideon, we're going to kill him for tearing down our altars, for destroying our gods. And Joash turns face, turns about. Whether he goes back to worshiping God, I don't know. But he kind of comes to the conclusion that Baal is not a god, as you see there in 31. It says, and Joash said unto all that stood against him, will ye plead for Baal? Will ye save him? He that will plead for him, let him be put to death. While it is yet morning, if he be a god, let him plead for himself, because one hath cast down his altar. Was Baal such a god? Let Baal take care of it. If he's a god, Baal will kill Gideon. You don't have to do it. You leave it to your God's hand. You leave it to Baal's hand. And of course, Baal ain't a god, so there's nothing he can do. So they don't do anything to Gideon. And about this time, as I said, during the harvest time is when the Midianites would come in, and you see that in verse 33, since Gideon was trying to harvest his crop, it was harvest time, so then all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the children of the east were gathered together and went over and pitched in the valley of Jezreel. So now that you have the Midianites coming into Israel again. And then you have, but the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and Abisra was gathered after him. So his family, instead of wanting to kill him, now they're gathered behind him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who also was gathered after him, and he sent messengers unto Asher, and Zebulun, Naphtali, and they came up to meet him. So he calls this army together to go against the Midianites. And if I remember right, I think he gets some 32,000 is what he starts out with. And of course, as we know, the Lord whittles it down to 300. I believe there's over 100,000 Midianites. I don't remember the exact number of them. And this 300 defeats this great number of people, this great army. God told Gideon how to do it, when to do it, gave him all the instructions he needed, and Gideon followed the Lord's instructions. And he won a great battle against the Midianites. We ain't got time to get into Samson's. You got anything you want to add to it there, preacher? Ben?
Like when Joshua, I always love the fact that, the walls came down, Rahab was killed out. To me, the fact the walls came down is a miracle in and of itself. Only God could do that. But the fact that one house was still standing is as much of a miracle as the rest of the walls falling down. The fact that you could make all those walls fall, and yet somehow one house, however big it may have been, still
sitting on the wall.
Yeah, it's sitting right there by itself. Everything else is gone. That had to have stood out like a sore thumb. Yeah. Not just the Israelites, but also to all the people in Jericho too. What happened to her? And then you get Gideon. Between Joshua and Gideon, you've got two completely opposite people. And Joshua was the leader from the beginning.
Right.
He's fighting battles left and right. And Gideon, you've got a man who's hiding behind the wine press trying to thresh his wheat. Be a God can use both of them. Ultimately, he's the one who wins victories anyway.
Right. what strikes me is he took an idol worshiper
Yeah.
and broke him of worshiping idols.
Yeah. And you can see that, verse 13, I guess, where Gideon's talking about, he said, well, what all that stuff that our fathers said you did in bringing us out of Egypt. So obviously, Gideon had been told. It's not like Gideon didn't know, but he said right there, he knew what God could do, but yet he didn't trust him enough.
If your own family doesn't trust him enough to worship him, you kind of get the idea, that he's not trustworthy. But just because your family don't know what's going on, or if they should have, they're worshiping idols, they ought to know what they were doing wrong.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it gets when, I don't know how many generations, it had gone since the last time they had a decent leader that worshiped God.
Yeah.
But as generations go, it gets worse and worse if you don't stay true to God's word. Reed, you got anything you want to add? You?